Hi, Justin here, and when it comes to rugged versatility, the Jeep Wrangler may be the king of the mountain, but Summit Racing doesn't discriminate when it comes to offering parts for the sport utility and off-road markets. Case in point, the Toyota FJ Cruiser. Summit Racing carries a wide selection of parts for the FJ Cruiser, and in this video we're going to show you how to install Eibach's Pro-Truck leveling system. Why a leveling kit over a lift kit? Well, this particular FJ is not an off-road machine, but more of a lifestyle vehicle used to tote bicycles to and from the trail. The Pro-Truck system delivers the stance we're after without sacrificing ride quality en route to our next adventure. Plus, it comes with matched dampeners and springs, including to eliminate some of the guesswork and provide 2 3/4 inches of lift or leveling. So what goes in the installation? We'll follow along and find out. So we've gone ahead and started to remove the front skid plate. This FJ has an aftermarket front bumper. So it has this aftermarket skid plate and then the factory one. We have to remove both to get the control arm bolts. So we've gone ahead and already pulled our wheel off. We're gonna start by removing all our brake line holds. Go ahead and disconnect your ABS sensor now. Go ahead and remove your brake caliper. Now, a little trick I like to use, I like to keep a tarp strap around so you can hang your caliper out of the way so it's not hanging on the brake line. We're gonna go ahead and pull our brake rotor off next just to get it out of the way. Remove your upper sway bar link now. I'm gonna grab mine with some locking pliers just so it doesn't spin. Before we remove our upper control arm, we're gonna go ahead and break loose the 3 bolts for the top of the strut mount and the bolt on the bottom as well. We're gonna leave this one on a couple threads for right now, so when we disconnect the lower bolt, the strut doesn't fall. Remove the cotter pin and then loosen the upper ball joint nut. So I'm just gonna take a pry bar, apply a little pressure to the upper control arm, and then tap on the knuckle with a hammer. Then grab a wrench. So now it's time to remove our strut. We're gonna take that nut off that we left on earlier and then remove the lower strut bolt. So now we've removed the strut, we've done a little more inspection, and we've opted to replace the both upper and lower control arms. We're gonna use Mevotech's original grade control arms, and it's a complete control arm with brand new bushings and ball joints to make the installation a little bit easier. We're gonna go ahead and remove the dust cap, the axle nut, and the knuckle so we can remove the lower control arm. Next, we're going to remove the tie rod end. Now that the tie rod's been removed, we can remove the 2 19mm on the bottom and remove the knuckle from the ball joint. So our lower control arm was a little bit more difficult to remove than the top. So with the bolts stuck inside the steel sleeves, we opted to use our air hammer and were able to break it free and get it off. So with all our old parts removed, it's time to install the new stuff. And we're gonna start with our Mevotech upper control arm. Make sure to use never seize on your bolt, so if anybody ever has to pull it back apart, it comes back apart easy. We're gonna go ahead and just snug this bolt up and then come back and torque it later when we can torque our lower control arm. So our factory camber adjustment hardware was pretty trash. So we opted to use this specialty products company new camber caster bolts for the Toyota. We're just gonna go ahead and snug these up now and then come back and torque them. We've got all our bolts installed and snugged up. The next step is to torque them, and we're gonna torque this one, and this one here. Next, we're gonna install the lower knuckle piece on the bottom ball joint. Go ahead and torque this to the factory specification. We're gonna go ahead and install the steering knuckle now. Now we did go ahead and apply a little bit of Loctite to these. Once you get both seated and snugged up, then you're gonna torque them to the factory specification. So we're almost ready to install our new Eibach struts. I wanted to show these off a little bit before we put them in the truck. They have these 4 adjustable snap ring grooves at the bottom, so you can adjust the amount of lift you're putting on. To adjust them, we used our Astro pneumatic snap ring pliers. Also, to round out our strut, we used KYB's strut top mounts. These ones are really awesome made and came with new hardware too. So now that we've got our strut in place, we're gonna go ahead and start by putting our bottom bolt in, followed by our 3 strut retention bolts on top. We got this one snugged up. We're gonna come back and torque it. Now we're gonna move to the top of the strut and start the hardware. Once we get these snug, then we'll torque them to the factory specification. Now it's time to connect our upper control arm to our knuckle. Now we're going to torque it to its factory specification. Now we're going to torque the lower bolt from earlier. Time to reinstall the factory axle nut and then torque it to the specification. We're gonna finish up our install by installing our sway bar end link. And this side is done. So you're gonna wanna repeat this process on the other side. Next, we're gonna move on to the rear, installing the coil springs and new shocks. Now that we've got our wheel off, it's time to remove our shock. Now, being this vehicle is a little bit older, the top shock bolt is frozen, so we're gonna opt to cut the bolt with a Sawzall. We're gonna remove the lower shock bolt now. We're gonna remove the rear sway bar link now. Now we're gonna go ahead and remove the coil spring. So we're ready to install our new spring. We've inspected our factory bump stops and they're in good condition, so we're gonna reuse them. Now make sure when you install your spring that it sits in its seat properly. Time to install our new shock. I'm just gonna start the lower shock bolt now and come back and torque it later. We're gonna use our screw jack to lift our shock into position. So our stock sway bar end links were a little whooped on, so we're gonna replace them with these Pro Forged ones. So we're almost finished with our coil spring and shock install. Last thing we have to do is torque the lower shock bolt. So there you have it. Our Eibach Pro-Truck level and lift system is all installed. As you can see, we got a little dirty, but a little dirt never hurts. It's gonna have our 90,000 mile FJ handling and riding like new. I'm Justin with Summit Racing. Thanks for watching.